How you like that new intro, huh? Brand new. Well, it's been on some of our videos in the recent history here. We've been utilizing that a little bit more. But welcome to E2C Network, where we share the whole Auburn experience. And that is definitely the case tonight. We're always heavy a little bit on the Auburn sports here. But if it's orange and blue, it is what we do. Thank you for joining us, whether you're watching live or on the replay. We appreciate you hanging out with us, spending some time with us to talk about something that we love, and that is being part of the Auburn family. And more specifically tonight, Auburn football and a first half preview for the Auburn 2022 football schedule. Now, you might say to yourself, this is a little bit early to be doing this. Probably so. But as we get closer and closer to kickoff, there's going to be more topics coming up, more things to discuss than we're probably going to have time to squeeze in. So we're going to go ahead and get out ahead of this and start discussing these things now. So for the next hour or so, the hour probably tonight, we're going to take a deep dive into the schedule, maybe offer some predictions, not necessarily my personal final prediction of the schedule, but just talk through the ins and outs of what might be happening through the season, but depending on who's in what position, what we could see happening, just kind of getting ourselves primed for football season. So that is what is on tap tonight. In the meantime, though, before we get started with that, I want to welcome you here, and you can welcome each other here by doing this. This is our check-in period in part of our show. You can start off by smashing the like button if you enjoy this type of content here on YouTube. If you're watching on Facebook or Twitter, you can do similar things, retweets, all that good stuff, share it into a Facebook group, invite a friend, text them right now, send them the link. All you got to do is do that little share button, hit the link, and send it off to somebody. Let's continue to grow this little family within the Auburn family, because you guys are the best little family within the Auburn family. That's how you can help us. But right now in the chat window, post where you're watching from, city, state, international, all that stuff right now, so we know who is here hanging out with us. And we've got a lot of you doing that tonight. Also tonight, if you are a Booster Club member, and our call-in line for our Booster Club members is also always brought to you by All Things Auburn, you can call in tonight and be part of the show the entire night that you want to, as long as you want to be. It's exclusive for our Booster Club members tonight. Wednesday nights are for everybody, but on special occasions, we like to let our Booster Club members join in on the fun, and that is tonight. So with that being said, let's say hello to a lot of you who are already here. We've got Kevin, War Eagle, good to you. Good evening to you, I should say. Benjamin, Headland, Alabama. We got Linda from Lake Martin, as always, from Leeds, Thomas, Anthony Rudd, and Lynette, and John from Wetumpka. Good to see all of you. A lot of familiar faces, new and old, there. So thank you so much, guys, for being here to start off the show tonight. So let me just open this up. And if we get some of our Booster Club members in, we'll kind of let them jump into the conversation wherever we're at. But I want to kind of set the table for this particular first half of the season and kind of tell you where we're going to be going with this discussion tonight. Jerry, good to see you. He says Auburn will surprise people tonight, or this year, tonight even. I think so. Their tendency is to surprise people a lot, even themselves, and they have the capability to do that. I've been using this way too much the last couple of nights, but the old saying goes, if you can run a ball back 109 yards for a touchdown, anything is possible. Kevin, if you do want to become a Booster Club member, you can check out the link in the description. You can even just be a channel member here. It's not the same thing, but if you're looking for just other ways to do that, just hit the join button here. It's $1 a month. But the Booster Club, where you get access to all those things, that is in the link in the description. Just hit the Booster Club, and they'll give you all the explanations there how to do so. All right, so first half of the football season. Here's what we're going to do. I'm going to bring this up on screen for you guys tonight so that we can discuss it in full. And I'm kind of playing around with my system here a little bit. We'll do that for right now. Should we do that? Does that look good? Or is that too big? Let's do that. We'll just leave that up there for right now. This is your first half of the Auburn 2022 season. We've got the Mercer Bears. You got the San Jose State Spartans, the Penn State Nittany Lions, the Missouri Tigers, the LSU Tigers, lots of tigers, and lots of cats in this thing, lots of animals, and the LSU Tigers and the Georgia Bulldogs to round out. It is a 5-game homestand with one wallop to start off your road trips at Georgia. So that is how it's going to shape out. And if you even look at some of the times that are already announced. You've got 2 night games in a row. Going to be an outstanding atmosphere in both of those, I bet. You got the Nittany Lions at 3:30 on the CBS game, and then after that, it'll just determine about who is doing who's hot when and all that kind of stuff on who gets what times after that point. But yeah, so that is what we're looking at tonight, and we'll kind of keep referencing back to this. I'm glad you put the schedule up so I don't have to run 2 screens. I think Thomas is wanting to join us tonight, so we might see him in a little bit if he can get on. But yeah, so Booster Club members, join whenever you like, and we will be happy to see some of you all here on the show tonight. So when you look at this first half of the season, 5 straight home games, it looks like Auburn could have a very promising start, even outside of that scary-looking Georgia game in Athens. Defending national champions, yes, it pains me to say it just as much as anybody else, but 5 straight home games, 2 against 2 quote-unquote inferior non-conference teams that we should beat, right? We all think that, I think we're all, expecting that. Missouri is probably a win in most circles. LSU is, I would say, above a push for Auburn. Georgia very much in question. And then, that Penn State game is really what this kind of first half of the season hinges on. If Auburn can get over that hurdle, we will definitely have an interesting first half of the season. So we'll dive a little bit into each of these games, kind of talk about maybe some expectations, things that we want or that we want to see, that we anticipate seeing. It looks like everybody is very excited about that. Misery is garbage. I guess you mean Missouri, but maybe you meant to say misery. Yeah, Missouri has not been formidable that much outside of that first year or 2 that they got here when Auburn had to face them. Or I guess it was 2 years into them being here. When they had, what was his name? Last name Franklin as the quarterback? He was pretty good. We need to start 5-0, 4-1 at best. Well, what about that 6th game? Are you not even wanting to think about that 6th game? Listen, I don't think it's out of the realm of the possibility for Auburn to go 6-0, but that Georgia game is really what stands in the way. Let me ask the room this before we dive into the actual games here. What would you say if the record was 4-2, counting Georgia Bulldogs? Would you be disappointed? Of course you're disappointed, right? But would you be like, this is awful, this is not what's supposed to happen? But if the losses come to Penn State and to Georgia, are you going to be really upset? Or are you just going to be kind of disappointed? Or what is your mindset on that? Because to me, when I look at this schedule, I can see a world where Auburn's easily 5-1, but I can just as easily see a world where they're 4-2. So I think you need to be preparing yourself for that. If you're an Auburn Tiger fan, that is probably what you might see. It just depends how we lost the games. I think, Anthony, that is a fair point. I think a lot of what takes place during those games, like for instance, if you look at all of Auburn's losses last year in context, they didn't lose by a whole lot. They were in every game, but it's the way they lost, the way they fell apart that makes it seem so awful, right? So that's it's definitely part of the equation. Jerry has a similar sentiment here. I'd be irritated if we lost to Penn State. UGA is an obvious loss. Well, let's not approach it that way, Neil. But it's the most likely of all the 6 that we're looking at so far. Disappointed unless we win 5, he says. All right, we got our first Booster Club member joining us tonight. I was hoping we were going to see this guy, Mr. Thomas Manville. Good to see
you this evening.
Hey, good to see you, man. It's a little bit weird. I'm trying to get adjusted to these little new controls that I'm using. Like, we need this background up there. That's better. Trying all the little new things tonight to make things a little bit better for everybody. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing well, doing good. Hope everyone else is too.
I appreciate you being on here with us. Hopefully we'll hear from some more of our Booster Club members tonight to discuss this with us, because there's a lot to discuss in this schedule right here. A lot of intrigue, a lot of interest. So before we hit the first game and kind of dive into it, what I kind of asked the room here, I asked, would you be disappointed with 4-2? Is that something that's a big disappointment for you?
4-2 is a realistic disappointment to me.
Okay.
I can see us winning that Penn State game, but I can also see us losing. We kind of got the same feel last year. We had two kind of cupcakes, and then we went up there on a road game, didn't go out the way we planned. I want us to win Penn State. I think we can. I know we can win the Penn State game, but it's still a toss-up right now. We don't know.
Yeah.
We're not there yet. But the first two games, I think we're going to kind of gel out. That's fine with me. Mercer should be fairly easy. San Jose State, I think, will be a little bit more of a test. And I'm excited about that game. One, I'll be there. Two, I'm taking one of my closest friends in the whole world to their first Auburn game after they swapped over from being a Bama fan their whole life. So I'll take that credit.
Right. Right.
Penn State's kind of a toss-up. Go to Missouri. I think it's a winnable game. There's no reason that we should lose that game. But coming off of a hangover loss to Penn State, if we have that, I think we could struggle a little in the first half of the game. LSU, brand new coach. We just went through that. Sometimes it doesn't work out the way you really want it to. Penn State's a completely winnable game. Thank God it's not in Death Valley. We finally escaped that curse last year. And that game caused me stress, but I'm okay with it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's that game. There was so much riding on that game last year. Spirit of the Auburn fan base. Just everybody was just so hardcore locked into that thing, and I mean, it ended up working out in our favor. So I'm happy that we got that monkey off our back. I know that, excuse me, Coach Harsin as well was happy to have that in his that notch in his belt, so to speak. It's kind of like a saving grace for him at times. It's like, hey, do you remember that I ended the 2-decade curse that nobody else could do? Not Tuberville, not Chiswick, not Malzahn. I got that thing. So he definitely has that in his corner, and I think he should utilize that and bring that out whenever he can. All right, let me do something real quick. Let's see if that, because I think that that takes you away. All right, we'll reference back to it when we need to. But for you and me tonight, let's start off our conversation. You all join in the comments section too, as much as you'd like to. But let's start with the Mercer Bears. It's going to be a win, right? I mean, we don't. It's not so much that we need to dive into the X's and O's of what could happen in this game and what does Auburn need to do to win. Auburn needs to show up. Don't pull a Georgia State. For heaven, just please don't. I cannot live through another Georgia State. I'm pretty sure I will combust into all oblivion if Georgia State happens again. So Mercer Bears, 7:30 Eastern time, 6:30 Auburn time. It's going to be on an SEC Network Plus game if you've got that. What is it for you, other than it being the first game, that you're going to be looking? Is it just the excitement of the first game, or what are you hyped about for this game?
There's always going to be the excitement of the first game. It's you're finally back. Football's here. You're going to be excited 10 days before that game, even if we're so excited now. But as it gets closer, you're going to get more and more excited about it. It's the first game of the year. It's in Jordan-Hare. It's a primetime game. Granted, some of us may have to listen to it on the radio, but that's all right. We've got Andy Burcham, and he's awesome at what he does.
Yeah.
I'm looking for fluidity. I'm looking for consistency. I want to see everybody moving the way that they're supposed to move. I don't want to see a weird play where an offensive lineman lets somebody through. We're better than that. We've got every opportunity to set the record straight and set the tone for the entire year with the first game. That's what you do with the first game as an athlete in any sport, is come out and set the tone.
Yep. And I would say, if you think back to last year's opening game against Akron, remember what Tank did? Busted open from the get-go and just locked it down. And then kind of a question, not directly related to this game, but he's just asking about, how good our defense can be. Is going to be a top 20 defense. We're not going to know that in game 1, 2, 3. But my mind is I have a lot of expectations and hopes for this game for the defense, because I want them to come out and just, I think the offense is going to have some heightened moments, some very exciting moments, because that's what everybody's looking to see. They've got probably some special stuff planned, maybe a trick play or two just to throw out there to get everybody excited and make people plan for that. But I think the defense, I would love nothing more, as boring as it would be, than for the defense to come out and shut out Mercer. That's honestly, Thomas, that's what I'm looking for, is a shutout of Mercer. I don't know anything about the Mercer Bears in terms of their football scheme. If they're, I mean, I think they're probably Division 2A, not in our particular division, but that's what I'm looking for, is not so much the offensive side of things, because I'm already preparing myself that we are not going to, we're going to have to work through this offense a little bit and get it kind of right, figure out, get the quarterback, whoever that's going to be, settled in. But I want the defense to come out. I want Derek Hall to get 2 sacks in this game. I want Colby Wooden to have a fumble recovery. That's what I'm looking for, this defense to dominate, to set the tone, and not have, as Dusty said, give us trouble like they did in the past. Because wasn't it like a 30-15 win or something like that recently that we played them? Do you remember that one?
There was a pretty awful matchup with Mercer, and I don't even want to talk about Jacksonville State.
All I know about Mercer is that they gave Alabama a hard time several years ago. There's actually a history of that, of some teams kind of coming up and not just giving Auburn trouble, but Alabama as well. Hey, hello, Lamo. We still, to this day, as much as we tried to let Louisiana Monroe beat us that one time, we didn't do it, but Alabama has done it. So never let them live that down. And there's a reason you see they're so skittish to play teams like South Alabama, Troy, UAB, the smaller schools. There's Alabama State. I love that we go do that, because it just shows, hey, we're willing to put our name on the line in the state.
Well, I love playing those teams because I can afford tickets.
Fair point, sir. And actually, they just released a flash sale. $24, I think, is what they are right now. $24 that you can get into the nosebleed. And they're doing a similar promotion to this game that I took part in for Akron last year. You're going to be, just know that you're going to be on the far upper deck nosebleed, and the sun's going to be facing you. It's going to be hot, even at 6:30 up there. But you're going to be treated to one of the best views in all of Auburn up there, because you've got the sunset over Jordan-Hare Stadium. If it's a beautiful day, in hopefully a blowout win, it doesn't get much better than that to start off football season, my friend.
No, sir. Kick your feet up and have a good time at that ball game.
Yes, it will be. I think it's going to be a good one here. Apparently Dusty's got a funny story about Lamo he wants to share. Is it Lamo? He said that he'll share some other time. But yeah, go to this game if you can. I think it's going to be a good one in terms of excitement and stuff. San Jose State, I know you're going to that one. We can kind of jump into that one if we want to real quick. Let me bring you back over here. San Jose State, 7:30 on ESPNU, technically the first nationally televised one in terms of not being behind a plus symbol thing. I know most people have that, and you get it on your phones or whatever, but it'll be that first time that it's on a quote unquote national broadcast channel. The Spartans coming over from San Jose, California area. We've seen them before. Last time they were here, I remember us handling them pretty well, but I also remember their former head coach had a pretty good offensive history. So I don't know where they find themselves in this day and age in terms of football. 7:30 again, or excuse me, a little bit later this time we'll be starting on ESPNU. So 30 less minutes of in the sun, especially if you're on that main side of the stadium that maybe you'll have to be in the sun. I think there's going to be a lot of excitement for this too. The problem is that everybody is looking ahead to next week. So, I mean, I know you're going to this game. I'm not trying to downplay that for you, make you disappointed that you're going. I know you're not disappointed. But in terms of San Jose State, when you think about what you're looking for in this game, what do you think you're going to see? Any thoughts on what you yourself, as somebody attending that game, might see?
I'm still looking for the same things from the Mercer game. I want to see growth, continuity, all of that. Is you've got to carry over into week 2 now. You can't look a week ahead to Penn State at this point, because San Jose State, from everything that I've looked at, is a much better team than Mercer and has the ability to cause problems if you're not playing the game. you're looking over your shoulder, you're going to put yourself in a terrible spot.
Yep.
You just can't do that. It's a 1-0 mentality, like Harsin says. We're not thinking about Penn State. Now, in the back of your mind, of course you are, but you're not practicing for Penn State. You're practicing for San Jose State, and you've got to get those packages in. You've got to execute as well. You brought up defense a little while ago. Yeah, I would like to see Derek Hall with 2.5 sacks in the Mercer game, and I'd like to see him with 2.5 total in the San Jose State game as well. Defense is going to be big. You've got to figure out how well you rotate. So when it comes to the bigger games, when you need to rotate to keep fresh legs further into the game when it's not a blowout, that everybody knows their spot. They got to get in there, get set up, get ready to go, know what the play is. And the same thing goes for offense too, with receivers changing out later in the game. You may have a completely different backfield package. You may throw in a fullback. Schenker played fullback last year. He's mainly a tight end, but you can shift guys around. You got to know where your spot is, when to get there, and how to execute. So the first 2 games give us all a giant platform to get those things done. And I expect a win out of both of them, but I expect a score difference. I expect the score difference to be bigger at Mercer than I do at San Jose State. But I hope I'm wrong.
Yeah.
I just want to blow everybody out of the water. That's Auburn. I know we can't do that.
I think Jerry from Facebook brings up a great point, and it's kind of where my mind was going next on this particular game, in terms of when we think about things that we're focusing on, maybe some storylines that are coming from this game. After you get the excitement of game 1 out of the way, seeing whoever is the starting quarterback for the first time and whatever they rotate in, the question becomes, Harsin has said, and he's shown, I have no problem playing multiple quarterbacks. And, I think a lot of people believe that just because he names the starting quarterback doesn't mean that job has necessarily been completely secured. So the question is, will we rotate quarterbacks in the first 2 games? I'm going to take that a step further. Let's assume we've had a starter. We will have a starter and played most of the snaps in that first game. And let's say, I'm just going to throw it out here. Let's say it was Zach Calzada. It's probably still the betting money, no matter what you've heard at this moment. Zach Calzada, and let's say Robbie Ashford comes in for a series or 2, even in somewhat meaningful time. What do you think about game 2? Is this the game where you see one quarterback, if it's Zach, given the reins to see what he can do one complete time before Penn State, or do we still rotate another one in?
I would venture to say that your first game, let's take the first half of the Mercer game. If whoever the starter is playing well, they're probably going to play into the third quarter. If it's a blowout, you're going to rotate some guys. I don't think it's healthy to rotate guys on purpose to see who your starter is going to be, if that makes sense. So the second game, I would expect we've got SEC talent, so there's no reason within the first game somebody can't play. I would look more towards the Penn State game or possibly the Missouri game for there to be a definite quarterback change. I don't see a 2-quarterback system regularly, but if you're going to test it out, you do it in the first 2 games.
So you're more thinking, just to clarify, that there's going to be kind of a one person for that second game, maybe still a little bit, but like you are really giving that quarterback that you're playing to play for Penn State the time he needs in San Jose State. And like you said, just on name alone, you expect more out of San Jose State than you expect out of Mercer, because Mercer is not in the same division of football that we are. So just a name, where you find yourself in terms of hierarchies, that kind of lends itself to think it might be a little bit more of a challenge, but we shall wait and see. I'm excited for you, because when's the last time you came to Auburn? Did you make it last year?
I made it to the Birmingham Bowl. The last game I saw in Jordan-Hare Stadium was the 2007 Iron Bowl. The last last one.
Wow. It is high time for you to get in there and just to get in there. It says, Thomas, are you buying the packages? Talk about Ashford. I'm skeptical myself. That's what Dusty asked you.
I'm still buying the package for Ashford. I don't think that it's going to be every game we put him in. Mm-hmm. But I think that there's going to be a package for him, that there may be a 3rd and 2 and maybe the LSU game or the Ole Miss game. I don't think you turn it over to him in a Penn State or a Georgia situation. But in a conference game, a 3rd and 2, I think he's a threat to run and or throw, specifically to play in the Iron Bowl where Nick Marshall rolled out. It looked like he was going to run it, then he pulled up and tossed it to Sammy Coates. I think he's capable of something like that. It's not a very hard throw. He's an athletic guy. He can stop and just pop the ball over to somebody. I think there's a package for that kind of gives him a little bit of freedom to run what he's kind of feeling. But I don't think we're going to see it every single game.
Yeah. I'm so ready for us to get into the stadium that, whatever they show me in this in these first 2 games, I don't care, because I want them to get everything kind of worked out in terms of depth chart. I know the depth chart is going to be set by the time we get there. Even coaches said that second scrimmage is really where they start paring it down to 2s and who's going to be on scout teams for most of the year. But I just want us to find a quarterback, give him the commitment that you're our guy unless you don't start getting the job done, but and get this next guy. If it's Ashford, get him expected and what his sets are going to be. But I really want us to, whether it's TJ, whether it's Calzada, I don't want to do this song and dance again like we did with Bo and TJ. None of this. I just want us all to get behind him and be ready to go into Penn State, because that is going to be a challenge, my friend. That is going to be quite the challenge. Penn State and Nittany Lions, 3:30, CBS, September 17th, in the heat of the day. Your thoughts?
Miserable atmosphere for everyone involved. It's summertime in the South, and as players have pointed out, and those of us that live and work in it, this heat ain't no joke. It really ain't. But Penn State's going to know that coming in. They've done their research. They understand it's one of the loudest crowds in the country. They know that they're coming into the same environment that Auburn went into last year going up there. They know this is going to happen. They're going to do everything they can to prepare themselves for this game, like they should. It's a winnable game for both teams. The heat is going to wear everybody out. Now, you can simulate humidity, but you can't simulate the temperature on the field at the time of kickoff and how it changes over that. I mean, real humidity it's a real thing, but they're going to prepare as best they can for that situation, like as they should. That's what you do in sports. That's what you do in any kind of a competition. You want to be in the best possible scenario to win. It's a winnable game for both teams. I don't think there's anything that can convince me otherwise that it's a 50-50 shot at this point.
Right.
No matter what, they had a whiteout and a huge crowd stacked against us. We're going to have a great crowd, a little smaller than what theirs was. We're going to have a little bit of weather on our side. Everybody's going to be prepared. I'm excited about the game because I need to know what happens.
Yeah. We got a lot of people asking about the wide receivers. We're not going to dive too deep into that kind of stuff, but what I would say about this, Anthony, and I think even Kevlar's talking a little bit about you, the size, what he's saying that Landon and Camden are going to, let me use what we're talking about, maybe to kind of bring that all together. What was the guy's name against Penn State? Dotson, that was killing us.
Jahan Dotson.
He wasn't, if I recall, he wasn't like the biggest wide receiver out there. He was just a dynamic wide receiver, and it was just their go-to guy, and it was killing us. Am I thinking of that correctly?
I believe it was Jahan Dotson was that particular receiver. Now, when you say big receiver, I'm thinking 6'4", 6'5", a Calvin Johnson, a Mike Evans, that 6'3", 6'2", 6'1". They're good receivers, but I don't think of them as big receivers.
Right.
But there was that one particular guy that absolutely killed us that whole game.
Yeah, I hope that we return the favor this year, and maybe it's a Camden Brown, maybe it's a Landon King, maybe it's a guy that we're not even thinking about. That we get excited about big receivers because we just haven't seen a lot of them. We've had receivers that play bigger. I think Darius Slayton, frankly, most recently is probably one of those guys who, more or less was wasted a little bit, but now in the NFL, you're seeing he plays a little bigger than he actually is. He's just a dynamic wide receiver. That's what I think of when I think of Dotson for Penn State last year, and that's what I hope we return the favor, whether it's Camden Brown, whether it's Landon King, whether it's Shed Jackson. I want one of our wide receivers to go ham on them and return the favor this year. I think Tank's going to get his yards in this game. I think the offensive line's probably going to get their first real test and see if they can keep getting that push that they probably were getting against those first two teams. this is probably that game that everyone on that team has marked on the calendar and says, we met the challenge last year on the road. We woke some people up that we were at least competitive and we're going to be the rest of the year. Depending, obviously we know how it all worked out, but this is the game I think that Auburn wants to make a statement on, not LSU, not Missouri, not Georgia even. Yes, you want to make a statement, but you're looking at this game as a moment to kind of say last year wasn't a fluke. This time we are taking care of business, because Penn State is, a lot of people are talking about, they've lost a few people apparently, but Penn State's one of those programs that has no problem reloading. Dusty says Dotson's in the NFL now. Mason could have just stuck Roger on him, and man, but he didn't. Yeah, let's not bring up those frustrations again about how that went. So from where you're sitting right now, Thomas, you got 2 wins. I think we all expect that to start off the year. 3:30 game, 2:30 Central Time game. What you know about the team right now, what you're feeling right now. Does Auburn beat Penn State in midday on CBS in front of a national crowd?
I'll give you a couple scenarios because I'm just not 100% on it yet. 1, we lose an incredibly close game late in the fourth quarter. 2, we absolutely crush them in the fourth quarter and win by 14. Last scenario I'll give you is I'm scared to death of this game because I don't know what's happening yet.
I think you should walk into this game with a healthy amount of expecting anything, because it's the first true test. This isn't, and it's a similar situation to last year. We played 2 teams we should have beaten, went on the road and didn't get exposed. We just showed that, we had some things that needed to be cleaned up still. A lot of those that we kind of saw coming. Some frustrations about style of offense reared their ugly head. And I think there are going to be frustrations that arise in this game because we'll have been watching 2 games where you rolled over everybody. But the difference is you're at home in the heat with a team from the North. No matter how much they prepare, you can prepare all you want. You're not ready for it. I think Penn State will be a very competitive game. I think Penn State will slowly, if surely, wear down, and they will not be able to maintain with the Auburn Tigers, who are used to this heat, because there you go. Dusty says he's undefeated in JHS. How does that make you feel? Can somebody get this man to the stadium?
Hold on. Hey, brother, if you undefeated it, like you said a couple weeks ago, and it keeps going, I'm going to send you some gas dollars, buddy. You deserve it.
I know. It's not these days. You got to plan for just tickets now. You got to plan for gas money the way things are going these days. Just think about, y'all just say a quick prayer for me when I'm driving back and forth to Auburn this season. I got to go 5 times. Well, 4. I'm probably not going to go to that second game like I talked about, but we'll see. You never know. I might be able to convince my family to let me go to that second game, because it is my job after all. All right, let's roll back to the schedule here. Talk a little bit about it. We've hit Mercer. We've hit San Jose State, Penn State. Even if we are a little bit trepidatious, is that a word? Even we're a little bit scared of Penn State, I think there's enough confidence there for a lot of us to be very hopeful for that Penn State game. Missouri, homecoming. How disrespectful is it for us to put Missouri as homecoming? Yeah, I hate that we do this, but you're seeing this more often amongst all the SEC teams because they're having a harder time placing that rinky-dink team where they need it to be for homecoming. So it makes me worried when an SEC team walks in here on homecoming, because that just gives them extra motivation. Now it's Missouri. Can you name me one player on Missouri's team, Thomas? Any?
No.
Bueller?
No, Bueller? I can't. Yeah, Bueller. Yeah. No, I can't. Let me shout out Michael Trott real quick. That's my buddy watching tonight. How you doing? Good to see you here.
Michael.
Missouri, it's homecoming. It's disrespectful to get scheduled for anybody's homecoming. But I come from the school of thought that your homecoming game, you should win, but you should schedule somebody worth playing too. But everybody wants that cupcake win because it's homecoming. You want to have a great time. Missouri's, they can be a pushover at times. There are other people that referenced it in the chat earlier when Gary Pinkel was there. They went to the SEC championship 2 years in a row, their first 2 years in the SEC, out of nowhere. Now, the East wasn't that great, and we all get it, but they made it 2 years in a row. That's allowed them to hang around in this conversation and not get, hey, please leave at this point. But they're just not that strong of a team. I understand that they're right in the middle of everybody between the Big 12 and the SEC in recruiting, and that makes it hard. It really does. I think it's a surefire win against Missouri. I think they'll have more fight in them than, they should show when you're just going to get whooped.
Yeah. To me, this feels like the Mississippi State game without the second half, if that makes sense. Like, I think, especially if Auburn does come off a loss of Penn State, there's going to be a fire lit on these guys. All right, we have to clean these mistakes up now. This is not going to happen again where we start this process of dropping games that we were in a close game for. Now, if Penn State comes in and just blows us out, that's a different story. There's a lot to be, addressed at that point. But homecoming, I would assume if you look at this schedule and kind of how it, I haven't looked at what everybody else in the SEC schedule would be that week. So when you're asking yourself, when are these games going to be played? It's kind of a multiple step question. You have to ask, what's the big games that week overall? Because that determines who's going to get the ABC game, the primetime, ESPN, all that stuff. Who's the big SEC game? That's who goes to CBS. So then you can start answering these questions. Here's my hunch. Just a feeling. I think Missouri is going to be another day game. I think it's going to be an 11 a.m. kickoff, which has not bode well for Auburn.
No.
I think it's going to be a day game. What do you think about any other thoughts or disagreements?
No, I'm with you. 11 o'clock SEC network only game. I don't think it'll even be on a major network. There's going to be somebody else out there that's more interesting than a team you're pretty sure is going to win. That's not a Division II team, even though it's a conference game. I mean, a lot of people don't watch, Rutgers conference games either. So,
right.
It'll be an 11 o'clock SEC network game. Won't get much attention, but we will get highlights on the SEC network, and they'll probably make ESPN as well.
Yeah. I hope that this is what we all expect it to be, a homecoming game, a game where it's never really in question. Maybe Missouri being an SEC team makes it a little bit of a conversation in the first quarter, but Auburn slowly but surely pulls ahead. And then at the end of the game, that's what homecoming is. They're about everybody feeling good about being back together, celebrating, the history of the university, of the football team. And then, you get a win, and then everybody has a good time for the rest of the weekend. So that's what we're going to hope happens. It's always a little bit scary, though, when you schedule an SEC team and somehow, some way, they make it a little bit more interesting than you were anticipating them to be. Let's talk about that LSU Tigers game. No time set yet. It's October 1st. So this is the last of the 5-game homestand. So think about it from this perspective. You got 2 games, Mercer, San Jose State. Yeah, it's going to be exciting the first game. That second game, there's going to be a little bit of a drop off just because it's still in the dead, of summer, basically still here. Penn State's going to bring the hype level back up. You got Missouri that's going to kind of maybe come down a little bit, even though it's homecoming. And then it's going to come right back up to LSU, because it doesn't matter how good the two of them are. There's a lot of hate. There's a lot of animosity, and there is a lot of history, even not as deep history between like Auburn and Georgia and Auburn, Alabama, or even Auburn, Tennessee, Florida. But there's a lot of history with Auburn and LSU. So do not count this one out. It will probably be the CBS game, as it typically is, which means a 2:30 kickoff in October 1st, which will still be the dead of summer. I promise you that, because that's just how we roll down here in the South. So your thoughts on LSU, Thomas?
I'm glad it's at Jordan-Hare. I really am. They got a first-year coach. They got a lot of changeover, and we just stole one of their receivers. So there'll be some, that talk's going to come between Core Moore and the rest of the team of, hey, man, I just left there. We can beat these boys, or they can beat us. Here's what we need to do. So I'm not saying we have an inside track, but there's going to be a little bit more heat in there than there should be. Again, I agree. I want 3 in a row over LSU. I really do. But the last time that we were supposed to just trounce them and they came into Jordan-Hare, it came down to a review of the clock running out down there with I think it was Danny Etling was their quarterback, and that's another game that it doesn't give you gray hair, it gives you white hair.
Mm-hmm.
But I want the LSU game. We're completely capable of winning that game as long as we've got all our pieces in place. But it's still Auburn LSU. It doesn't matter who's good and who's bad. That's still going to be a game. And I'm ready for it, man. Let's hit somebody in the mouth. You want to know where that game starts and ends? It's going to be on the offense and defensive lines. You watch that and you watch the tone in the first half and the beginning of the third quarter. If somebody hadn't established it by then, it's going to go to the end. But if somebody's established we're the dogs and you're not tonight, that game's going to be over by the third quarter.
Yeah, I'm excited for this one because I'm excited to see what LSU looks like. Mainly, this is what's interesting to me is, under a good head coach, they're not. It's not a pushover that they've had come in to replace Orgeron, but does the transition happen quickly? Because we've got obviously a history at Auburn of transitions happening quickly. People expected it last year, it didn't happen, even though a lot of us warned you it wasn't going to happen. I don't know that I expect a outstanding year from LSU, but I think that they have the talent. And if, Brian Kelly is all he's cracked up to be, I think he will find himself in a position to take advantage of that talent that could surprise a lot of people. I just don't know that 5 games into the season is enough time for him to right the ship in a regime change, even with that talent at home or on the road in Jordan-Hare Stadium. I in a CBS game, they're used to the heat too, but there's a lot that I think that plays against him and is in the favor of the real Tigers, not the Bengals, the real Tigers. So hopefully we get a win here. And Kevlar says, I hope nothing weird happens. Well, I'm sorry, sir. That's just what happens in these games. It is going to happen. Michael even brings up a great point. LSU, I hope everyone's healthy. So talk to me a little bit about that before we hit our last game. Because 5 games in the season, you've played 2 SEC games at that point in a strong matchup against Penn State. 3 probably tough games in a row in terms of physicality, being on the same at talent level. In your mind, knowing the history of some of these players that we have, what do you think about injuries? I'm not asking you to predict and, jinx people, but like, where do you think we might be at? Like, if you could see somebody being hurt or something like that.
First 2 words that come to mind are strength and conditioning. It's been notated everywhere that everybody is stronger, bigger, faster, and in better shape than they ever have been in their time at Auburn. So having last year with new strength and conditioning and the spring and the off season and the summer to get bigger, stronger, faster, everything tuned in the way it needs to be, I think we stand a better chance of less injuries than we did a year ago or 2 years ago. You have an entire new strength and conditioning program. 1 year's good, but that's not enough to get you where you're supposed to be to get to the next level or get through an entire SEC season, because we got it relatively easy with 5 at home. Then we got to start really, really working hard. And if we're 5-0, they're coming harder than they were if you're 3-2. They just all. That's everybody hungry to beat the teams that anybody in the SEC. We've got a pretty rough SEC schedule, just as any team in the SEC really does relatively. But to get out of that game, everybody's going to have to be healthy. Michael's 100% right. But that starts a year ago when the new strength and conditioning program started. It doesn't start week 1 this season. It's been a multi-step process to this point, and it has to continue. So strength and conditioning, and any athlete will tell you that's what helps keep you from getting hurt and that not making stupid decisions.
Right. Yeah. I think the spot that always concerns me is offensive line. We've got guys with a lot of, injuries, and that, to me, that is not a knock on the conditioning and strength. These are guys with histories of that they've been through some issues. And as much as you strength and conditioning, some things are just, they get re-aggravated. It's kind of the worry a lot of people have about Owen Papo on, defense, that he's not been able to kind of knock the injury bug. So I would say for me, I'm going to definitely be watching the offensive line in many ways, but can they stay healthy and stay together? Because if a group, we figure the group out and make it through this first half of the season together, it's going to give a lot of those guys that will be seeing maybe some potential time, if somebody gets hurt down the line, a lot extra time to acclimate and not be thrown into the fire so quickly. So that's kind of what I'm really watching for in terms of injuries in this first half of the season, offensive line. And I hope that we're walking into an LSU matchup where everybody's healthy. And after that point, I don't know, because that's the LSU game. You know, it's like you said, it means a lot. It means a lot to a lot of players there.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead and talk about it. Let's talk about it. Saturday, October 8th, at the Georgia Bulldogs. If you want to know misery, come live in Georgia when the Georgia Bulldogs have won a national championship finally in so many years. Sanford Stadium. I actually will be out of town, but I will be watching this game. So even though it's, on the road, I had hoped that I would be in town for this game so I could travel over there. It's not too far from where I live, a reasonable driving distance. But that is not going to be the case this year. I'm just not meant to go to Athens. Probably, thankfully so. The Georgia Bulldogs are the national champions, defending national champions. We said, even as formidable as Georgia looked, that if we had a shot anywhere, it'd be at home. It's hard to really make a case to beat Georgia, even with all the talent they lost, the talent that they've gained back. I'm sure the recruiting machine that they have over there is probably quickly filling some of those gaps. Thomas, make sense of this one for me. Can you make a case where Georgia gets handed their first surprising loss of the season to the Auburn Tigers?
It may be far-fetched, but I believe I can.
Okay.
First, I'm going to shout out Kevin Kelly here. Buddy, War Eagle, I'm glad you're here.
Yep. He is pumping the undefeated ever, and I love the way he barns, and I wish I had the amount of barning in him that he has.
That just shows he's got a good heart.
That's right.
So Georgia is the one on this section of the schedule that I'm going to realistically, as a football and a numbers and a measurables guy, look at and go, we don't know enough about it to say that we can win it, but there's always the Auburn in me that goes, we can win this. Yes, they're losing a lot of pieces, but they've consistently brought in other pieces to fill these places. We watched this over the last 5-6 years. We really have. It's in Sanford Stadium, which is a awful place for anybody to go play for plenty of Auburn reasons that are my own. It's gonna be a tough game. They're expecting right now to win that. They're not worried about it one dadgum bit. They're really not, because they're Georgia. They just won the national championship, and we have not consistently beat them over the last 8 to 10 years. They're not worried about it at all. They're probably going to count this as a win, which makes me want it even dadgum more. It really does. But realistically, looking at how we stack up, if we don't have continuity and fluidity on both sides of the ball, we really don't stand much of a chance. Now, if we come in and we win the Penn State game and then flatline and then struggle through Missouri, it's not a good fit. If we're undefeated coming into that, they've really got something to prove outside of just the rivalry. So this is going to be a slobber knocker. There's going to be broken fingers, stepped on toes, and twisted noses. It's going to be a ball game, and I'm ready for it. I really want to beat Georgia. But we're going to have to bring everything we got, and we're going to have to own the A gap on both sides of the center, no matter what. If we can't establish that in the middle of that Georgia defense with our offense, we're not going to just outrun them to the corners. We're not going to do it. We've got to go right down their throat.
To clarify your position on this game, do you think Auburn stands a better chance of winning this game if they're undefeated, or if they come in 4-1? What would your perspective be on that?
I think we've got a better chance at 4-1 than we do undefeated. Now, I want us to be undefeated and end up 6-0, 7-0, and keep going. But realistically, from what I know about this team and what I've I can see about football overall is if we're spurned just a little bit, there's just that much more fighting.
Yeah.
Because you can't, if you're on top, you're on top, and people say you can't let it bother you, but we're human beings. So if you're spurned and upset just a little bit, you're ready to lash out a little bit harder and play a little bit better, as far as I'm concerned.
Right. Now, I would tend to be along those lines of thinking. We talked a lot about this during basketball season, where baseball. Wow, did all three sports there. Basketball probably needed a wake up call, and they got it in Arkansas. And then after that point, they never kind of really reestablished that dominance. At times, they kind of showed it was still there, but it was never as consistent. It's harder to make that case that you need that in football because there's so fewer games, right? One loss changes the trajectory of your season. It doesn't eliminate you, but it changes what is possible based on your control immediately. To ensure your place in a playoff, you have to go undefeated. One loss could pull you out of there, especially in the SEC, where basically 3 and 4 teams are eligible every year, it feels like these days. So, yeah, I think I would agree with you, though, even without it being kind of same with basketball, that if we walk in there with one loss, it might actually be a good thing for this team, because the pressure's off in terms of losing that first game. They're just, these guys, I'm tired of what they have done to us for this long. I'm tired of hearing about how they were the team that just took it to us last year. We couldn't do anything with them. It may be the thing that spurs them that little bit extra forward, it makes that chip a little bit larger. Instead, let's say, hey, let's put that chip on their shoulder now. Give them a big loss. So I love your hope. I love the hope that you gave us. I think we're all, based on reality here, looking at this thing based on what we know right now, and we're probably looking at this one right now as a loss. Is that a fair statement?
I think so. And back to the original point, I'm going to be real irritated at 4-2, but I'm not mad. I'm not let down. I don't think the season's a total loss. I'm going to be irritated at 4-2 going into the Georgia game. Now, if we end up winning out, like if we end up getting through Georgia undefeated, then I'm really going to start to worry, because that's a lot more. That's a lot tougher schedule to get into after that Georgia game than before that Georgia game.
Yeah. Not related to the Georgia game, but I had a specific question for you. It says, ask Thomas if Finley starts the game for our game 1, will the fan base explode? I'm curious what you mean by explode. In happiness? In frustration? I'm assuming you mean frustration. Just the narrative that's around TJ right now. Thoughts?
If he starts the first game, there are going to be a lot of people that just that explode. Yeah, they're going to go crazy. But if he wins those first 3 games for us, you're gonna have to take your medicine, because he's the best chance for us to win.
Right.
And most of us out here are not college coaches. You don't know what's best for the team. We have our opinions, but at the end of the day, they're just opinions. The results and the facts are who won the game and who was the starter and who wasn't the starter.
Yeah.
And we can dislike it all we want to. That's a part of being a football fan, is we don't get to make the decisions. You have to trust these coaches, and you can either trust them or you can just rag on them all day long. But if we're winning ball games, I don't see much to complain about.
Opinions are very similar. Everybody's got them and they all stink. And some of us, they stink more than others. And I'm talking about myself, but hey, that's why I do a YouTube show, so I can air out all my dirty opinions out there. All right. So we're kind of butting up the end of our time. We're not going away just yet, but I want to kind of round out our discussion here with Thomas, since he was so gracious to join us from the Booster Club. Thank you so much for being with us tonight. Based on our discussion, what I'm hearing from you is a belief in a 5-1 start. Am I speaking too quick for you? I'm not saying this has to be your final prediction, but where you sit right now, 2.5 weeks from the season.
I'll go ahead and I'll just go ahead and Auburn 5-1.
5-1. You are not in a place where I think you're stepping out too much there, sir. Like we've talked about. Let's look at it again. Mercer, win. San Jose State, win. Penn State, really depends. The season, what happens in this first half, especially, is hinging upon Penn State. If Auburn gets out of their win, you're looking at a Missouri win. We talked about it. LSU, I don't see a lot to fear outside of just being an SEC talented team. And then Georgia, we've talked about it, right? It's Georgia. It's going to really depend on what Auburn has shown and what Georgia has shown at that point and who wants it more in that game. And even if Auburn wants it more, I'm not completely sure that they can beat the Georgia Bulldogs, but I sure hope so living here in that. So this isn't my final prediction ever, but right now I could easily make a case for 5-1. And I think a lot of Auburn fans would agree with us in that case. I don't think anybody looks at this and says, y'all are idiots. But we all, as we started off by saying this, you need to prepare for a world where there maybe is a 4-2. And that's not the end of the world. It's not. It is simply the reality of what's happened. We are not a team that has reached that point yet. We might do that during the season. We might get it all figured out. But still, there's a lot of ways to go. There's miles to go before we sleep. And the guys are up for the task. So for you, Thomas, final thoughts on the first half of the season and anything else on this topic that you'd like to address?
I want to say thank you to Devin for the kind words. I appreciate it. Overall, last point, irritated by 4-2, not mad, irritated. I'm happy with 5-1. 6-0, I might just pass out.
Just don't do it while you're driving, please. Just make sure you're somewhere safe if you're gonna be passing out on us there. I hope that no matter what happens in this first half, especially, everybody just enjoys being back together on the plains, even if you can't come to the plains, being together, watching with your family and stuff, because this is what it's all about. This is what college athletics, it gets us started, gets us geared up. This is going to get it for those of you that says we're a basketball school now. This is going to get you to basketball. So embrace it. Embrace the process. Oh, embrace the series of events upon which everything progresses. Did I avoid it enough there? Embrace the series of events upon which everything progresses for this first half of the season. And we're going to have a really fun thing. So, Thomas, thank you for joining us tonight.
Absolutely, guys. It is great to be an Auburn Tiger.
Thank you. We're going to hang around for just a little bit for some questions for everybody, but we're going to let Thomas go. Thank you so much, sir.
Y'all have a good night.
All right. Bye. All right. We're going to go ahead and close down the phone line for just a little bit. I'm going to bring that schedule back up, though, for you guys to take a look at while we discuss this a little bit more, just to take a few more comments and questions. So get those in, keep those coming real quick. A couple reminders for you all. First thing is I'm going to make an announcement. The plan right now this season is to have a Thursday night, 8 p.m. Eastern time, 7 p.m. Central show for the rest of the season. For the rest of the season. Next week, part 2, as the LSU Tigers would say. We're going to do this again. Part 2, looking at the last half of the season. And then I have on schedule, I think that last Thursday before we get to the first game week, us to do a final prediction show with everybody. It's kind of like doing that bracket thing that we're going to do. So you got things to do for the next few Thursday nights. And then every Thursday night during the season, we're going to be doing a season preview show. My hope is to get some interesting voices here. Other than that, we will have some, of our booster clubs on here. You might hear some E2C network personalities on here. I'm hoping that I'll have someone talking alongside with me on Thursday nights for those preview shows. That is the plan. And I ask you guys to be ready, be flexible. It is something new we're trying. If you guys show up, we'll continue to do it. It's something that we're continuing to involve our content here for you. So just be anticipating that. Other reminders, as we always do here, please do make sure you check out the links in the description for ways you can help support the content. Become a channel member. A lot of you are already doing that. You can have an icon next to your name, recognition. It's easier for me to see you in some of these busier live streams that are coming up. I know it doesn't seem like it right now, but they're coming. And you get access to emojis to use during that. And I've been thinking about some new emojis to put up there, at least a new one to give you guys for the upcoming season. So please consider that. You can also join the Booster Club. $1 a month is all it takes. Get yourself some extra perks there at the Booster Club. And there are other ways you can help support the content there. All right, let's jump back in. Keep your comments and questions coming. We'll take a few more on this topic that we've been discussing. I wanted to bring myself up a little bit closer. There we go. I don't look Well, that's probably a worse view of me, but anyway. Jerry, glad you enjoyed the chat. Devin says we are going to beat Georgia, and she is calling it first. So everybody take note of that. She is the one that claims that one from the kitchen, I bet. John says that if we go 4-2, we might not get to a bowl game. We can probably have that conversation next week. And we'll try to remember that, John, if you even want to remind us that, like, in the scenario where we lost to Penn State and Georgia, what has to happen for Auburn to make the bowl game. I think that's a good conversation piece. So let's put a pin in that one, John. I'm going to put you as responsible party for remembering that next week. If you're here next week, hope we see you then. Anthony points out that 6-0 and 5-0 would be huge for recruiting. Absolutely. I know we're going to have a lot of people visiting during this time. So please do, if you can go to these games and participate, be part of that atmosphere, show these recruits what this is all about. That's going to be an even bigger help to that. Excuse me. Got all choked up there for that. Thursday nights are good. So I want to clarify when I said that we're going to be doing this on Thursday nights, we're going to still have our Wednesday night show. I've made up my mind. Wednesday nights are always going to be the same all year. It's about you guys. There's no set topic. It doesn't play well in the algorithm on YouTube. It can't figure out who to show it to. And we're competing with some other shows that are on that time too. But that's for you guys. Everybody can call in. We just go all over the place, but we focus here on this topic at hand on Thursday nights. And that will be a lot of pregame prediction shows, kind of prep for those particular games on Thursday nights. That is the plan right now. Devin brings up a great question. Are you going to be doing Monday nights after each game to grade the game? Sorry if you said that, missed it. That is my plan. I haven't specifically said that, if you've noticed yet, just because I'm kind of figuring out the logistics of when that I know you guys want that, and a lot of you have expressed that. So I think we will do that. I'm just trying to figure out with myself and some personnel and some other things that we're trying to do, what day that falls best on. It probably will end up still being Monday night, but we shall see. So just stay tuned for that. Basically, what you need to plan on is that E2C is going to be bringing you a lot of content this year. Almost every night. No, I'm kidding. False, you're upstairs. Good to hear. Glad you're not in the kitchen these days. 2022 will be a great year for Tank. Get the beast the ball. I agree. Give that man the rock. Kevlar, I would like to not just make a bowl game, but to win one. We have been terrible in bowl games for a while. We've also gotten saddled with some very surprisingly good opponents in some of these lower games. Houston was not a pushover, but they were not the world beaters that you play in some of the other bowls. But we've gotten paired with some unfortunate people at times, and it's bitten us in the butt a couple times, especially where we've been at the end of some of these seasons. If we go 5-0, we beat Georgia. I second that. Well, we were just talking about it a second ago. I think the better scenario is us to be coming in 4-1 at that, but we shall see. I won't be complaining if we're 5-0 at that point. Michael says, listen, do not apologize if you haven't been here in a while. Listen, this is a place for everybody. As long as you behave yourself. This isn't a place where we're going to let people act like fools. But I will say that, we want you to feel welcome to come here when you can and be as involved as you want to be. And so, Michael, no apologies necessary. Eastern Kaiju or Southeastern Kaiju, late to the show. How is the Penn State game at 3:30? Yeah, I know it's frustrating, but it's the best game that CBS can get in the SEC. So it makes sense that they would take it. I understand it. I don't like it. So yes, wow, the War Dustbuster, you're bringing that back out. That T-shirt's still up there on the web, on the T-Public page if y'all want it. Nobody's bought it yet. People asked me to make it. Nobody's bought it yet, so it's just going to sit up there in perpetuity until I get bored with it. I'm coming up with some new T-shirt ideas that you guys might like to put up there. And by the way, when you sign up at I think it's the top level of the Booster Club, you get a free T-shirt if you're looking for something like that. It's not free, obviously, because it's just a perk of what you get, but it's free at the time. Thomas, I saw this question earlier. I forgot to bring it back up. I have not really decided if I'm going to actually do a projected depth chart video. I have an idea for the rosters that I just want to put out there for you guys informational wise, but not necessarily a projected depth chart. I'm not saying no, that I'm not going to do that. It's already kind of being done, and there's a lot of people with a lot more, should I say, clout that have already put those out there. That I guess what I'm trying to say is I haven't decided if it's a project worth me doing right now, but I'm not ruling that out. So thank you for asking, and I will keep that in mind. That's something that you would like to see. And I appreciate you valuing my opinion on that. If we don't do an official like video or live stream about it, now I'm thinking about it, there may be a way for me to do it in my kind of own style. But anyway, we will try to have a discussion about that on one of the live streams or something. I will make sure that we just have some type of discussion about it, even if it's not in its own dedicated video. Michael, hey, listen, you order the heck out of that War Dustbuster t-shirt. It will make my day if I see someone walking around with a War Dustbuster t-shirt, because then I know that you're part of the E2C network family. That's an interesting comment, Benjamin, and I don't know what to make of it, so I'm not going to bring it up. Let's see here. We'll take a few more comments and questions here. If we're 5-0 going into Georgia game, that only builds momentum to beat them. Depends on the consistency of the offense bottom line. Yeah, I mean, that's a fair point, but I think there's something to them taking that little bit of a humbling loss against Penn State and then really not wanting things to get out of control and using that as motivation to beat Georgia. Yeah, we talked about that heat a little bit earlier, Kaiju, about for Penn State. Kyle, do you think who do you think will be calling plays, Harsin or Keesall? Keesall. I think Keesall's calling the plays. I think Harsin has input, about as much input as a head coach can have. And when I say that, Keesall's running the plays that Harsin wants him to. His job is not on the line because I don't make those decisions, so I can't fully make that statement. But he understands like that there's a lot riding on this season, every season, but especially after what's happened and the lack of confidence in certain areas. So the plays that will be run will be Harsin's, but Keesall will make the decisions. I don't know that for a fact. I've not spoken to them, but that is how I would operate it if I was in their position. We're not splitting Penn State and LSU. We win both or lose both. I could see a world where we find a way to lose to LSU. I just don't see it happening this year. Oh, Devin, that's a good idea. That's a really good idea. Y'all need to stop giving me good ideas tonight. LaMarcus, record prediction. I had this on the calendar and I forgot to look at it up again. It's on the calendar somewhere. I think it's the week of. I do it the weekend before starting weekend. So yes, that's coming. That video is going to happen, which reminds me, someone asked earlier, let me see if I can find it real quick and I'll come back to some of the other questions. I missed it earlier and it was a good question. There we go. Linda asked, are you coming to the preseason game? 8/27. Yes. My answer to that is yes. Obviously, please understand sometimes things change, but I've been waiting for them to announce that for quite some time. So my plan would be to be at the preseason game the Saturday before for fan day and do something similar, do a post-game show after from the mobile studio from my car. So be ready for that. I will plan is to be there right now. I might actually, there's a slight chance I might go to Auburn this week for something else. So stay tuned. I haven't made solid plans for that, so don't bank on that. But there might be a chance you might see me pop in Auburn this week. Thomas, yeah, I think Thomas and I are on the same wavelength there. A frying pan for her, that t-shirt, that would be funny. But yeah. So there you go. All right, guys, we have had a great conversation. Thank you so much to Thomas from our Booster Club who called in. And thank you guys so much for being here tonight on a not ordinary night. But go ahead and get the word out. Thursday nights this year, the plan right now is it's E2C night for preseason, and preseason obviously, but for pre-gaming it and talking about the game that will be coming up that week. Obviously with me here, hopefully with some other guests, some maybe familiar faces, maybe some new faces. Haven't worked all those details, but this is the first kind of getting out there and letting you know to expect not only Wednesday nights, probably Monday nights, but now definitely to your repertoire Thursday nights. We are ready to have an amazing, a fun, and awesome preseason, but 2022 season, no matter what happens, because it's always great to be an Auburn Tiger. I appreciate each and every one of you being here. Please do make sure you check out the links in the description for ways you can help support the content, all that stuff, and smash that like button on the way out of here. You guys are the best little family within the Auburn family, and I mean that from the bottom of my heart. Until I talk to you again, War Eagle.